Hello and welcome. We're going to watch Brad Nelson take on Valentin Mackel in a Mardu mid-range deck battle. These guys worked together. Patrick Dickmann has also had success with the same list. Mardu was not a huge factor at the Pro Tour, but Brad had success with red-white, decided, you know what, I really want to add black to this list. I want to play Butcher the Horde. I want to play Crackling Doom. I want to give all my tokens +1/+0 and lifelink with Sorin. So here we go. Turn 2 Seeker's got to be the right start for this deck, right, Luis?
Yeah, the deck has very few 2-drops. It has, Seeker and Lightning Strike, and then Chain to the Rocks as its early plays. So having the only one that lets it on the board is pretty decent, especially since if this is like, say, a Rabble Master, it blunts that. It makes it so you don't get a free token.
Now, do we have enough data now to say that this deck is a real thing? These two guys running into each other at 10 and 1?
That would certainly point towards it being effective, and I think that, I'm not convinced about this card, actually. The card that Brad just cast,
Hordling Outburst.
Yes, I think this might be one of the weaker links in the deck. That being said, weak cards can still, do enough for the what the deck needs to justify themselves. Even though it's on its face is a lower power level card than kind of the rest of the deck. But overall, the deck looks good. It looks like it plays well. I mean, we saw Valentin kind of dismantle Chapin with basically a sequence of plays where he's able to cast Chain to the Rocks and Butcher in the same turn. Then Chapin played one card, then he played Elspeth, then he played Sorin, and it was just enough overall that he kind of overwhelmed Chapin, even though Chapin had a very controlling, he had Ari Lax's Obzon deck.
Chain to the Rocks seems like a pretty good card in the current metagame.
Yeah, one of the big incentives to playing this deck over, say, something like Jeskai, which has a lot of the same cards, like it has Rabble Master, Lightning Strike, and Crackling Doom and Jeskai Charm are kind of similar, and Seeker the way exactly, is Chain to the Rocks is very good. And the way the Jeskai decks are built, they can't really play Chain unless you really overhaul the spells they play.
But the thing the Mardu deck has to surrender is it doesn't get to play Dig Through Time.
Right, and Dig Through Time is huge. I mean, I'd rather play Dig Through Time than Hordling Outburst, though. We've got some dueling banjos here.
3/3 lifelinking Seeker of the Way. Crunch is over. Brad does not seem interested in trading all 3 of his tokens for it. Falls to 16, untaps and draws a card.
Offering the trade of Seeker against 3 tokens makes sense. And here comes the Rabble Master. It'd be interesting to know if Brad chose to play Hordling Outburst on 3 and then Rabble Master on 4, which makes sense since he wouldn't have gotten the extra token since it would have run into the Seeker, whereas now the token's actually attacking in a reasonable manner, along with a bunch of other tokens.
That makes sense.
Mackel just letting it all through. He might have a way to, pump his creatures. He might think he's the aggressor. He's got a Lightning Strike in his hand, so if he goes Lightning Strike, Rabble Master, attack you for 6, and gain 3 off the Seeker, he's way better suited for a race.
Yeah, he's the one with the lifelinker, right?
Yeah.
Having Seeker of the Way seems like it puts him in better position for the race. Sorin would obviously give him a huge edge in the race, but...
Yeah, but letting Rabble Master survive is dicey.
Agreed.
And,
yeah.
I mean, look at this game.
So even if you had a Sorin there, you would lightning strike the Rabble Master?
I believe so, yeah. Valentin was on the draw, but because he had a Seeker, they've cast all the same cards. Brad had no 2-drop, so Valentin the whole time has been draining for 3 multiple turns, with that Seeker, hitting for 3, gaining 3. So Valentin's very far ahead on the life race, despite being on the draw, which is impressive. And Brad, of course, didn't play a 4th land, which also makes it a lot more difficult for him to leverage his cards.
Following up on the turbo match from last round that was going all the way to time, so we didn't get to show it, by the way. Tamada Ryochi is your new King of the Hill. He did defeat U.S. national team member Isaac Sears at the end of that. And
it looks like he's 11-0 as well.
Yeah, he is the only 11-0. He's currently in the feature match area on another table playing Shadi Badran, who is the only XO1 player. So that's table 1.
Brad deciding what he wants to play here, given that he doesn't have a 4th land. He could be slow rolling the 4th land, but if he doesn't have it, then he doesn't have as many good options because he needs to play something like a Sorin or a Butcher of the Horde here to really get ahead. Whereas if casting something like Crackling Doom is decent, but it doesn't do exactly what he wants. It looks like he has the 4th land. He's just deciding what to play. See, I don't mind when people do that because, he wants to make sure he knows all his plays before starting any of them. But whenever I draw the 4th land or I play the 4th land, then I think about what I want to do. Because you're not really giving up any info because your opponent doesn't really have a choice there.
Well, what he decided to do was to play Sorin, plus it. All 4 of those goblins picked up an extra point of power and life link. So 8 points of life swinging from Valentine over to Brad.
Yeah, it's a 16-point life swing, but Brad gets to, he gets to sacrifice a Sorin to do so because Valentine can just kill the Sorin right now.
Which also means, though, that Valentine's not attacking Brad.
Yeah, so Brad gained 8 plus 5, he gained 13 life or so, and did an extra 4 damage. So a decent use of a turn, but not an insane one. I mean, I still think that Valentine has a slight edge because he's going to still get to cast a spell here, assuming he has a decent one to cast. And that puts him a little far ahead of Brad because he now has Seeker and a real spell ahead of Brad's 4 goblins.
Well, he starts with a temple and keeps it on top. That's not great news for Brad for next turn. Let's see what Valentine has for this turn.
It looks like he's casting a spell because he's assuming that the Seeker and the 2 goblins deal 5 to Sorin.
Exactly.
Though he doesn't even need to cast a spell because if he doesn't trigger prowess, let's say he had a Butcher the Horde or something along those lines, he would still be fine to kill the Sorin by just attacking with all his tokens. In fact, if he had a Butcher, he could just sacrifice one of the goblins.
Well, he's got a Hordling Outburst. So that's going to put 3 goblins into play, which is nice for the future, and potential defenders. I mean, he may be interested in trading off with Brad's tokens at some point.
He could leave 1 extra goblin back in case Brad plays like another Sorin, but I think Valentine's happy enough that if Brad does that, so he's rather just get an extra free point of damage in.
Yep. Brad takes 1, Sorin takes 5, and Brad's turn. Hordling Outbursts, it doesn't sound like you like the card very much, but the interaction with Seeker here has looked pretty good to me.
Yeah, it has been fine. And I think the deck might just need a 3-drop, and especially one that synergizes well with,
with Seeker.
Seeker and also with like cards like Sorin and Butcher the Horde. So it's enabled by cards like Sorin, Butcher the Horde, and Seeker, but I think in and of itself, it's the least powerful card in the deck. I mean, it's less powerful than Crackling Doom or Butcher the Horde.
And it's kind of in the Mantis Rider slot in this deck if you want to line this
Mantis
deck
Rider is a much better card than Hordling Outburst.
I'm not arguing that.
But again, Hordling Outburst, synergy is a real thing. That's why you see cards that are on power level alone wouldn't necessarily see play showing up in a lot of decks.
Yeah, the Sorin synergy seems particularly good. I mean, that's one of the reasons they're going to black with this list instead of going to red. Start with the red. Instead of going to blue, you start with that red-white core. Jeskai splashes the blue for Dig and Mantis Rider. Mardu says, "I want Sorin and Butcher of the Horde."
Crackling Doom's a big one too.
And Crackling Doom, sure.
Yeah, and then
which essentially cancels out Jeskai Charm.
Yeah, and access to cards like Murderous Cut is also not bad. I mean, that's just a very efficient card. Not actually much in the sideboard. Their sideboard is basically all red and white cards with the exception of Read the Bones. So either way, you could have ended up there.
Read the Bones is not bad.
No,
it's no Dig Through Time, but
it's not Dig Through Time, but it is definitely a good card. And of course, the Seeker who gets to attack is obviously advantaged over Seeker that just got played.
Brad does have 2 mana untapped to potentially play, a Lightning Strike. Wow. Sarkhan triggers the prowess on the Seeker as well and heads to the air. Valentine lining up an attack with trying to decide whether to attack with the tokens.
I think attack with the tokens is a little risky because if Brad does have the Lightning Strike, he kills your Seeker and then blocks a token and gains 3 off it, so you're not really doing that much damage.
Yeah, Valentine clearly expecting a Lightning Strike, expecting his Seeker to die. Picked it up just when Brad tapped mana, and yep, there's the Lightning Strike. So Valentine did not fall into the trap of attacking into lifelinking Seeker, left his tokens on defense, but Sarkhan flies over for 4.
Yeah, and Sarkhan is going to get destroyed by Butcher of the Horde here.
Butcher of the Horde eats a goblin for haste and kills Sarkhan.
I think that puts the advantage kind of back into Brad's camp if Mackel does not have a good follow-up here. If Mackel does, he's still a turn ahead. So, both players have to be playing relevant spells, basically at all times. But I don't think that's going to be too hard. It looks like Mackel's got a bunch of good ones in his hand.
definitely fallen behind on the board. I mean, Brad's been stumbling on mana a little bit. He's still only on 4. But the deck seems totally capable of operating on 4.
Yeah, most of the spells cost, 4 or less. Like, Brad could have Sarkhan, Brad could have, I guess Elspeth is a post-board option. So really it's just Sarkhan and Wingmate Rock, which are both very effective cards, but still...
Dueling Butchers.
Brad's only 1 mana away from casting them.
All right, so this Butcher's clearly going to get haste. Does it also want Vigilance? Does it also want Lifelink?
I don't think so.
No
I think
Vigilance.
these Goblin tokens are valuable resources.
No Vigilance, no Lifelink. Just take 5. Just take 5.
And what's interesting is both players have gained so much life this game that their life totals are fairly high compared to how many swings have happened. There's been a lot of attacks.
That's fair. Lane number 5 for Brad, but it's a Temple. Scries, and it looked like it stayed on top. I think I saw a second Butcher floating around Brad's hand. It's a lot of offense. But Valentin on 16.
Yeah, and again, Valentin's, gained a bunch of life off the Seeker. He could have gained life off the Butcher, but didn't really need to. So I think just waiting until his life total is a little more threatened before, resorting to that.
That sounds right.
It'd be a little easier if Brad had the 5th mana and could play like Sarkhan and just destroy the Butcher immediately. But given that he does not, he's going to have to decide whether he wants to be racing Butchers when he's now going. If he attacks, he'd be only behind by 3 points of life, less if he sacks a Goblin. But Valentin has more Goblins, so he can afford to get into that sort of race easier. And Valentin has more mana, and presumably is going to get to play an interesting card this turn.
Brad attacking. Looks like he's lining up an attack with the Seeker and the Butcher. And 1 Goblin token?
And clearly representing a spell like a Crackling Doom, for example, would be very effective here.
Oh, wow, yeah. Crackling Doom would both trigger the prowess on Seeker and also kill the opposing Butcher.
It's also kind of free to overblock the Seeker with tokens, because if you don't end up needing the extra tokens, it doesn't cost you anything, and if you do, you're really glad you blocked with them. So if Valentin had like 8 tokens, he could block the Seeker with like 5 of them, and it would be, just as profitable. So here...
He blocks all available tokens stand in front of Seeker, so he wants to kill it. And he can kill it through even 2 spells.
Brad could have like double Lightning Strike here, but then he still has to Lightning Strike a token, which Valentin would rather have happen if he wants Seeker to live. If he double Lightning Strikes the Butcher and trades for all the tokens, Valentin's glad he blocked.
There's 3 mana. That smells like Crackling Doom.
Yeah, I
believe
it
is Crackling Doom. Right? It's Crackling Doom? Yeah, no, you don't get a Goblin token.
Yeah.
Crackling Doom wants Butcher of the Horde.
Yeah, you don't have an option there.
I think Valentin was just focused in on that combat and lost track of what was going on. So that triggers Seeker. That means Brad's going to gain 3 life. He's going to kill 3 of those tokens. Basically, 4 of Valentin's Goblins die, 1 of Brad's plus the Seeker, and now Brad looks like he wants Lifelink.
Yeah.
Down at 8, I can't blame him.
So Brad goes up to 13. The board's going to be clear, except Brad's going to have a Butcher and a token and a card in hand, which I believe is Sarkhan, against Valentin's 2 cards in hand, with Valentin on 1 more mana. This is the mirror, after all. Valentin's going to have 1 token versus Brad's 1 token.
I think Brad has 2 cards in hand, and I think I saw a Butcher there, so.
Yeah, but I like Crackling Doom more than playing a Butcher here.
I do too. No, that turn worked out great.
It triggers the Seeker and kills Valentin's Butcher, which was better before because it had more tokens to eat off of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a less mana efficient play, but the impact on the board seems higher. Valentin cracks a fetch land.
And the mana efficiency is definitely relevant in some games, but here you're never casting 2 spells in the same turn, or you're very far away from it, so you shouldn't worry about it too much. Speaking of mana efficiency, Valentin just drew a Chain to the Rocks, so that's one of the perfect cards to draw here. Valentin looks like he's on Rabble Master plus Sorin. I like leading with Rabble Master here. You want to get that going, especially since Brad doesn't have a ton of cards in hand, so you might end up in a spot where you can have your Rabble Master live.
Now, if you're Brad, do you trade a Goblin for a Goblin?
It depends what your follow-up play is. Generally, yes, but if your follow-up play is good...
If he's holding Butcher, say.
Right. If you're holding Butcher, then I would be less inclined to do so.
Well, Brad took 2.
Brad
Wow,
also
chain
draw
for the
chain,
rocks
which
of his own.
gives him a turn where he can play 2 spells. He's not sacking a goblin to deal extra damage. He's just playing the butcher.
Huh.
Mackle's pretty far behind now because now his Sorin does not line up well against Brad's butcher. It just they both have a 4-mana spell, but Mackle's is just not as good in the matchup as Brad's.
What do you think of Brad leaving butcher on defense there rather than eating the goblin for haste?
I think given that it would put Mac on a 1-turn clock, I would be a little more inclined to just attack with the.
Yeah, that's what I was
here.
thinking. I mean, if you're right and Brad's last card is a Sarkhan, though, then it's still a 1-turn clock.
Mac will attack with 1 goblin token, setting up a lightning strike, which I think if were I Brad,
Take that one.
that's what
Take
he would.
it, right?
Yeah, because Valentine was really representing lightning strike there. Maybe he was trying to get a free point of damage in, and Brad called. But Mac now leaving a token back. Now he gets to make a flyer. And that ends up with Brad having 1 card against Mackle's Sorin, so we'll see what Brad's last card is here, plus the card he drew, of course. It's also funny how well Crackling Doom interacts against Sorin. It just kills the bat and the Sorin a lot of the time.
Butcher of the Horde comes into play tapped, attacks Sorin, it looks like. And Valentin seems he's going to chump block with the vampire.
It's just better to block with the vampire because you can just make another one next turn, so it's basically free. So Valentin wanting to draw an answer to Butcher here.
Yeah, Valentin's hellbent. No cards in hand.
And he has to play the Temple because he has to get the Scribe, but that
Yep.
reveals that he's got nothing else going on.
Right. Scribes to the top.
There aren't very many cards you'd scry to the top. It has to be something that interacts with Butcher in a favorable way. Wingmate Rock would be quite good. Chain of the Rocks, Crackling Doom, another Butcher. All those cards would be acceptable. You're not going to leave like Seeker, Hordeling Outburst, Lightning Strike, any of those. You actually could leave Lightning Strike because Valentin could make a bat, get hit from Butcher down to 2, and then next turn try to go block Lightning Strike. It's not a great situation to be in, but it didn't look like he loved the card in his hand either.
He goes up, attacking for 2 lifelink, getting himself to 9, which would still die to a Sarkhan here.
Well, either way, the Sorin's going to the graveyard. Either it makes a bat and dies, or it gets attacked by the Butcher. But Valentin chose to gain the extra life, basically. Instead of having a bat in play, he'd rather be at a bunch of extra life because it forces Brad to not only attack the Sorin, but Valentin also gain 2 from lifelink. Valentin pretty far behind here.
Yeah.
They've traded cards and Brad's ended up a card ahead. I mean, this is also part of Valentin had more lands early, which was good, but now he has 7 lands and playing. Brad has 5. Just the 2 extra spells are very relevant.
Oh. Suicide attack with the Goblin, but that lets him trigger the raid on Wingmate Rock. What does a pair of 3/4 flyers do to this board?
Well, if Brad has 2 blanks, then the 3/4 flyers go a long way. They can double block Butcher, they can eat the 2 goblins. If Brad has a removal spell, this turns really ugly really quickly, though.
Temple and kept the card on top.
Yeah, without thinking much about it, so it was very clearly one of the good ones. So let's say Brad does not have a removal spell here. You have to attack the 2 goblins. So once you're priced into that, I like attacking with everything, especially since the Rabble Master also threatens to kill a bird by itself.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Valentin, you can double block Butcher. That's like the first obvious thing you look at.
You take 6 in that world,
You take
go down
6
to
going
2.
to 2, and then next turn you have to draw something or die. Actually, you have to draw something really good because you kill the Rabble. You have to draw something that kills the Rabble Master, then you can block a token and go to 1. I mean, you're dead to almost anything Brad has, so you just have to ignore all of that. You're basically
assume he's got blanks.
Writing off Brad's blank, including the card he scried to the top. So, that being the case, maybe you block. Let's say you could block Rabble Master with the token, block a token with the Wingmate Rock. It takes 6, falling to 2. Brad gets to gain 5 because he just sacks the Goblin token that gets blocked to give lifelink.
You're not in a race, though. I'm not sure the life gain is all that relevant. I might.
Yeah, you're in a bad situation either way.
I might kill the Rabble Master and keep half a rock around.
Well, either way, you keep
you
half
keep
a
half a
rock.
rock either way.
You,
Yeah, that's
but
fair.
whether you want to kill the Rabble Master or Butcher, I think killing the Butcher is a little bit better.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
I mean, I still think Valentine's going to lose this game unless he draws something amazing because he is, facing down.
Dead on board.
Dead on board, Brad with a spell on top.
Draws his card, says go. Brad's just going to make the lethal attack. No, his Murder is cut off the top. So Rabble Master goes down. Oh, Brad showed him
the
something.
Crackling Doom.
Crackling Doom, yeah. Crackling Doom kills the Wingmate Rock.
Any spell in Brad's
deals
deck
the
wins
lethal
him the
damage.
game, basically.
Pretty much.
But yes, Crackling Doom is one of the ones that actually instantly wins him the game.
So Brad Nelson, up a game in the Mardu mid-range mirror. It's unfortunate to get paired against a buddy in a situation like this. Are you super sad to get paired against a buddy? Are you happy that one of you is going to get to 11-1? Are you?
You're pretty unhappy to get paired against a friend at like 5-1 because you're still pretty early in the tournament, and 5-2 is not a particularly exciting record. At 10-1, it doesn't feel that bad. You both are going to have good records. One person's going to be nominally a win away from top 8 or a win and a draw away from top 8, and the other person's going to be 10-2, which means that if they go 3-0, they top 8. So you can't really ask for too much more than that. I mean, IDing into top 8 is, of course, the best time to get paired, but
sure,
you can't pick those spots.
Well, let's look in on the King of the Hill match. This is Shadi Badran against Tamada Ryochi. Tamada it's an Abzan match, although one of them's aggro and one of them's mid-range, I believe. Shadi is the Planeswalker version that Ari Lax won the Pro Tour with, whereas Tamada, if I'm not mistaken, is on a list much closer to Mike Sigrist's. And I do see Anafenza in play. I see Rakshasa Death Dealer in play.
Yeah, the Tamada, I mean, there's coursers on both sides, so they're both.
Oh, it's not actually Sigrist's list, then you're right.
Yeah,
he might be on the in between.
They're both looking to play lands off the top of their deck, and Tamada is actually playing. Looks like a slightly more aggressive mid-range version in that he's mid-range and has courser, but he does not have Caryatid, and he does have Rakshasa Death Dealer and Fleecemane Lion, and Air of the Wilds.
Wow, so he took Sigrist's list but put the coursers in. What did he take out? Meanwhile, Siege Rhino attacking in and eating some creatures in combat, but goes down. Looks like there's a monstrous Fleecemane Lion on the top of the screen.
Yeah, a monstrous lion is, kind of like the Abyss eventually, just eats a creature every turn, but Wingmate Rock into Wingmate Rock is a pretty good sequence of events.
Okay, Tamada, the last undefeated. Shadi is at 15, Tamada is at 19. Tamada is fully 10-0 at this point, whereas
11-0.
11-0, and Shadi is 10-0-1.
And I think I can see part of the reason that he is 11-0. He's got all Guru basic lands, so he
is it the Guru lands?
Yeah, he came prepared.
He's playing against betas though.
Yeah,
Gurus trump betas?
Gurus are pretty hard to find.
Fair.
And even though Tamada is ahead right now on the board, the second Wingmate Rock could change that pretty significantly. I mean, a Fleecemane Lion and a Rakshasa are actually both kind of the same here. They're both just, the Abyss. They're both just marching in.
Block.
Though Abzan Charm does kill Rakshasa. I mean, you just force it to make it, make itself 4/4, and then you exile it. But flying is very good in these matchups, and having nine power worth of flyers, especially given that Wingmate Rock helps, you race by gaining you 3 a turn when you attack with all 3 of those.
Now, Shadi does have a Hero's Downfall on top of his library. I mean, Tamada, sorry.
Yeah.
Tamada has a Hero's Downfall to take out Shadi's, the good half of the Wingmate Rock, the one with the life gain trigger. So Shadi won't be gaining life. Is 6 power worth of flyers going to be good enough here?
Also, both players are basically not drawing lands unless they hit 2 in a row, which it looks like Tamada did. But
yeah, he just did.
I mean, that getting 1 to 2 life turn from Courser also matters. Could be time for Anafenza to get in there too. You have a Hero's Downfall that messes up potential blocks, but it's still dicey if Shadi just goes ahead and blocks with too many things.
Shadi's chump blocking with soldiers. That I assume there was an Elspeth before we got here.
Yeah, that would seem like a good assumption.
Abzan Charn into Shadi's hand.
Followed by Hero's Downfall, which has less relevant targets given that there's double Courser and you can't kill the lion, but it's still a thing. As expected.
Yep, Hero's Downfall, the good half of the Wingmate Rock. Shoddy decides to attack with one of the 2/3/4s.
Yeah, if he gets too aggressive, then Anafenza and even the coursers can start attacking in there. There's also a bat waiting from, looks like from a previous Sorin, so that could also influence his attacks pretty significantly, given that once Tamada goes ahead and turns everything sideways, it gets a lot tougher to decide how to block. Though I don't think he's going to do that quite yet.
Courser reveals a land. Thoughtseize.
And we probably need an Urborg checkbox to know there's a planes tapping for Thoughtseize. There's an Urborg in play. So even though it's not actually going to trade for a card, this forces Shoddy to use his Abzan Charm without being able to target the Death Dealers. This is a good play.
Oh, nice. Can't target the Fleece Main Lion because it's hexproof. Can't target the Death Dealer because it's only a 2/2 right now. So what? You just exile Anafenza?
You could exile Anafenza. You could also
Distribute some counters?
You could also distribute some counters. You could also draw two and
draw
cast
two
Hero's
with
Downfall.
Thoughtseize on the stack, though?
Well, you know you're drawing Hero's Downfall, so you're going
which
to
you can
cast
just
one
cast.
of them. But that's still, yes, it's still not really what you want to do.
All right, well, he makes a 3/4 Courser. Oh, and Thoughtseize gets a Thoughtseize, so
Yeah,
it doesn't
which isn't
completely whiff.
super relevant, but yes, it is a thing.
And also gets the information that Shoddy is now hellbent. No cards in hand. Land, and it looks like an Anafenza now on top of Tamada's library. Which he's not interested in, so.
The second one
Skyland
is
sends it
a
to
little
the bottom,
less than good.
and Siege Rhino seems like a much better draw for next turn.
Now that the Courser's a 3/5, it prevents the Fleece Spin from getting in, which is the main reason to do that. But Rakshasa still marches on. I mean, that card gets really good in the late game.
Definitely. Soldier tokens continuing to chump block it. Feels like Tamada is just whittling away at Shoddy's position.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to get through multiple Wingmate Rocks, but I think, you know, this late game here, and I wonder how much the addition of Coursers has helped that. Could the normal Abzan aggro deck play this long of a game without falling behind? Maybe the Coursers and having, you know, 4 or 5 extra cards off them, making your Rakshasa a lot more threatening, maybe that was the difference.
Have we figured out what he took out yet?
If you look at the list, he doesn't have the one Ulcerate.
Okay. He's only got 3 Coursers.
And he only has 3 Coursers, this is true. He doesn't have Herald of Torment, so that was a
no
pretty
Herald of
important card,
Torment.
but
wow.
But it looks like he is, you know, deciding against, you know, trying to fly over and instead using Coursers to play extra lands.
Both Wingmates, one. It is now a 4/5 Wingmate Rock. Yeah, making those Wingmate Rocks 4 power is usually scary against Elspeth potential, but does Ryuichi even have Elspeth access?
Not in game 1.
Yeah. Not in game 2 either.
Or in game 2.
Yeah.
He has Wingmate Rock in the sideboard, which is not bad.
Yeah, I don't think Sigrist had Elspeth either. So it's much safer than that counter would be in a true Abzan mirror.
And both players on pretty much all gas at this point, drawing Hero's Downfall, getting a land off the top, then seeing a second land is kind of unfortunate. The soldiers have run out. That Rakshasa keeps coming over.
And here's the Siege Rhino. Tamada certainly looks ahead on board. A couple counters from that Abzan Charm are doing good work, but oh wow, Hero's Downfall.
The Hero's Downfall still sitting in Shoddy's hand. He's just choosing to reveal it because it was revealed off Courser. He doesn't really have necessarily a great target for it, though. There's 2 double Coursers, so killing one of those is, you know, fairly pointless. There's also, I mean, he could kill the Siege Rhino, he could kill the Anafenza, but he can't kill the Fleece Main Line, he can't kill the Rakshasa, and those are the cards that are giving him a little bit more problems.
All right, well, we're going to move back to our main match. We'll certainly let you guys know how this turns out. But meanwhile, Mardu tokens. Yeah, it's still in game 1 over on the King of the Hill table. Brad Nelson and Valentin Mackel starting up game 2.
Valentin again with the Seeker, but this time he's on the play, which is reasonably different, because now he can be, if Brad doesn't have a 2-drop, Valentin's essentially multiple turns ahead.
Turn 2 Seeker, scary enough to call out a chain to the rocks.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Just generally that you don't want to fall behind, especially if you have a 3-drop next turn. Not playing anything on 2, then playing something on 3, you get free multiple hits off the Seeker if you don't play your 2-drop there, or your chains as a 2-drop.
Well, he does have the Hordling Outburst as his turn 3 play.
Looks like Mackel could also play Hordling Outburst here if he so desired. He played a tapped land and a Seeker last turn. Battlefield 4 is doing some work. Both on his life total and in service of letting him cast spells. Looks like Valentin's running the Rabble Master first, in which case the Seeker attack is a little less good. I mean, it might still be able to trade for 2 tokens.
Just line the goblins up in front of it, right? That's an easy
Yeah.
block for Brad if he attacks the
But I
Seeker.
think you can just wait a turn, and because you know it's attacking as a 3/3 next turn. You're just giving up value if you attack now.
I agree.
And Valentin did not play a 4th land, it looks like.
This time it's Brad's turn to go straight to 4.
No, he doesn't have a 4-drop this turn.
He does have a scry to the top, though.
It looks like Brad has untapped lands, so he could have played a 4-drop, and he's just passing the turn, which could easily represent Lightning Strike on the Rabble Master. Valentin with a handful of, good 4s and 5s with Wingmate Rock and Butcher the Horde in his hand, but a couple lands away from casting them. Still, if Brad doesn't have anything this turn, Valentin's not in terrible shape. He could cast Hordling Outburst and attack. It looks like he's not going to cast the Hordling Outburst pre-attacks.
Could also be Crackling Doom from Brad, where Valentin actually gets a choice. Oh, wow. Valentin goes for 2nd Goblin Rabble Master.
And Brad doesn't have a removal spell.
Brad hasn't let him into combat yet.
Okay, yeah.
Valentin would like to go into combat. Brad may respond. Wow. Seeker heads in.
Oh, this represents an end hostilities from Brad.
Got it. And Valentin sees it coming.
Yeah.
Yep. Valentin knows what's up. End hostilities. Brad chump blocked with his tokens. That was the trigger. You saw it. Valentin saw it. Yeah. Brad slow rolled into that end hostilities, wipes away a Seeker and 2 Rabble Masters, losing only a Hordling Outburst for himself. So effectively a 3 for 2. Is that fair?
Which isn't bad, but it also, because Valentin's been missing land drops, it's going to give Brad the first opportunity to untap with 5 or 6 lands in play and actually make a more impactful play than just Hordling Outbursts. And there's the follow-up Hordling Outburst for whatever that's worth.
Dueling Hordling Outbursts. Brad has one of his own.
Those do trade fairly well. There is that. Since even though Sorin gives +1/+0, it doesn't actually impact how they trade. There's not much of actual Anthem effect.
Still no 4th land for Valentin?
No, he's going to need it pretty quickly here. Brad going for a Lightning Strike on the Rabble Master before getting a free token, in which case, looks like Valentin's happy trading off tokens here. Which you wouldn't be if you had Wingmate Rock in hand, except that he's 2 lands away from casting it, so he figures there's no real benefit to waiting.
Brad just takes the damage. Valentin willing to trade, Brad not interested.
Well, Brad has mana for cards like Sorin and Butcher that make him want the tokens in play.
Yeah.
Brad has no fear of an opposing Sorin.
Now, Sorin goes up. Goblins go over for 6 damage and 6 life. Valentin can not quite kill the Sorin with his Goblin tokens, but he'll attack him anyway. Does he have to, Lightning Strike here?
Make more goblins.
Wow. Still pinched on lands. Valentin Has had a handful of gas the whole game, but he can't cast any of it. Temple, Brad Scries. He's thinking about this one. And he pushes. It's probably, what, a weak spell? Because he would have pushed the land instantaneously.
Yeah, I mean, low impact spell like a lightning strike, for example, is not really going to do a whole lot here. Also, Brad is looking for a finisher. He's looking for a Wingmate Rock, Sarkin, Butcher, all those cards. So I think he's more interested in that. Even something like an End Hostilities, potentially even something like a Rabble Master, if and it's not even clear that Brad has all these cards in his deck still.
He's got a Butcher, and Butcher picks up haste thanks to that Goblin. And what just happened to this Sorin?
Sorin is making a bat.
Made a vampire?
It's transforming.
Got it. Sorin transforms into a vampire. 2/2 flying. Valentin all the way down to 4 now.
He draws his 4th land, though he might still be priced into casting Glare of Heresy on the Butcher here.
Now casting his own Butcher, he's got enough goblins to get it lifelink, potentially get out of this. I mean, if he puts Glare of Heresy on the Butcher, he's still taking 2 in the air.
Right, he's going to 2. He has to maybe hope to draw another land afterwards and cast Wingmate Rock. But I think Glare is less risky than casting something like... I guess you're dead to Kraken Doom no matter what, but at least this way you're not dead to, say, Chain to the Rocks.
Sure.
And that will do it.
Another Butcher, another haste. Valentin shows, I had Butcher, Wingmate, and Read the Bones, but didn't have the land to cast any of it. So Brad Nelson wins the match. Brad moves to 11-1 with this Mardu tokens deck. Pretty cool deck. All 3 of these guys seem to be having success with it. Valentin now back against the wall. He's going to have to rattle off, 3 wins and then hope he can draw?
Just rattle off 3 wins, then he'd be in the top 8. Presumably.
3 rounds left after this. That whole having the first round off thing has thrown me off.
Right.
Yeah, 3 rounds left. Valentin needs to win the first 2, and then he'll look at the scoreboard and figure out if he's in a position to draw. Brad closing in on it at 11-1.
Yeah, at 11-1, you're in a position where maybe you win your next round and can double draw in. I mean, you've got outs to do that.
Tamada Ryochi won that first game when we left. He had been on the attack the whole time. That Death Dealer just kept being the Abyss. Every turn, Shadi was forced to put some creature in front of it. And eventually, Tamada broke down all those defenses, won the first game. Here we are in game 2.
Heir of the Wilds attacking fearlessly into Courser of Krupix, as it's done all tournament.
Oh, yeah. Murderous cut on Fleece Mane before Tamada can untap 4 lands and potentially play a 5th.
Paying full retail.
5 mana cut.
Yeah.
I don't know, if the lands came from Courser, is it still full retail?
Yeah, I mean, he still... he paid the gold price, not the iron price, let's just say.
Siege Rhino for Tamada.
Pre-combat, so
3,
to get the little ferocious action
Ferocious turns the air into a 3-power attacker.
Tamada's looking pretty good to advance to 12-0 and be very favored to make top 8. He needs to pick up 1 match point in his last 3 rounds, which is generally not that hard to do.
Right.
Should he taking off his glasses to further study the board? At this point, Shadi can, start using removal spells. He's got Abzan Charm. He can kill the Siege Rhino. He can play his own Siege Rhino, it looks like, and that's not bad. But given that you're on the defensive and Tamada's likely going to play another play this turn, you really do want to use your mana the most efficiently as possible. If you're just trading 1 for 1, you're losing, like 1 play per turn. But if you can leverage 2 plays in the same turn, then you could end up in a pretty good spot.
No, he's going to start with Abzan Charm to exile Siege Rhino. And that may be it for this turn. He certainly at least ships the turn back.
Well, he's got another charm, so he wants to end up in a situation where, or he's got, I guess, the charm on top. So if he had another in hand, that would be pretty good. He'd be able to kill this Siege Rhino. Instead, he's going to take another 6 essentially here from the Rhino plus the hair.
Right. Yeah, nothing to do with that 3 mana.
But he chose not to shuffle away a charm, which I like. I mean, we're repeating the same turn, which is not a good turn for Shoddy, but he does have a Courser out, so he's getting incremental advantage every turn. So as long as he doesn't die, eventually he'll pull ahead. And at some point, he might be able to trade the Courser for the air if he wants to, if he can kill all of Tamada's 4 power creatures before it attacks.
Shoddy ships the turn with 7 mana untapped.
In full knowledge, by his opponent of the Obs on Charm in hand. So it looks like pre-combat.
Yeah. Down goes Rhino. Makes sense. Air still attacking, and yeah, Shoddy has decided he now needs to trade a Courser for it. Tamada might be out of gas here.
And so, I wonder if this is it looks like a conscious decision. He did not sacrifice the Heath while the Courser's in play, so he turned down a point of life. The upside is that Tamada doesn't know what Shoddy's top card is.
Oh, sure.
I feel like that I would rather just gain the life and not and give up the information, because you're just going to play all your cards anyway. This isn't like a control versus control match where you're playing around 4 spikes and stuff.
Well, it breaks even on life, right?
Well, he chose not to sack while the Courser was in play. So
if he's ever going to sack it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because he's going to sack it to get rid of Sylvan Carriage off the top of his deck. He does not want to draw that. So I would rather give up the information for a point of life, but there are times when it's certainly right to do the other side of that. I actually think Shoddy's really far ahead now, because basically Tamada just didn't have a play this turn.
Yeah.
And we can see Shoddy's hand of a Johnny, Utter End, and then a Wingmate Rock on top, which is going to have him raid next turn.
Well, here's Rakshasa the Death Dealer.
Utter End has some advantages over Hero's Downfall. This is one
Utter
of them.
End can kill it. Regeneration does not beat. And yeah, Tamada knows he's dead. He's seen too many threats come off the top. He says, you know what? Let's shuffle up and make sure we have time for game 3.
And that's a concession Ben Stark would approve of.
Oh yeah, I like it too.
Ben's a big fan of conceding when he still has a chance to win, because he doesn't like wasting time. We actually, kind of mess with him about that.
Does he concede? He give away too many percentage?
Yeah, I think he's a little too aggressive. He's like, look, I had like a 2% chance of winning that game. I'm like, 2%? That's plenty. But I think Tamada had a less than 2% chance of winning that game, and given that they are running up against time, that was actually a very smart move.
I'm not sure 2% is too many to give away.
Yeah, maybe it's not. 1 out of 50?
Yeah, 50 to 1.
I have seen Ben scoop like 15%ers though.
Okay,
that I think is outrageous.
That's what I was expecting the story to go. I wouldn't give away a 10% chance to win the game, but I don't know. My line be somewhere with this, with 8 minutes left in the round.
8 minutes actually changes it quite a bit.
Yeah,
At 8 minutes, I would scoop, even if the top card was
the line
much
somewhere
much
around
worse.
5%. I would think.
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, the draw's not a catastrophe.
No,
it's actually a lot worse for Shoddy than it is for Tamada.
It is. If Shoddy got another draw, he'd be approaching the mythical, 003 bracket where you actually draw yourself back into the non-draw bracket. Because 3 draws is essentially like 2 losses.
And we did have one player advance to day 2 with a record of 6-0-3.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. It's pretty funny.
Doesn't happen very often.
No, not often. But once you picked up the first 2 draws, though, the third one actually starts looking good. The first 2 are bad, but the third one is like, well, this, like if I'm 6-0-2 and playing my last round, like I could just draw and make day 2. That's actually reasonable.
Were you telling me Paul Chion had a Grand Prix where he picked up 4 draws? Yeah, top 8'd?
Grand Prix Montreal, Time Spiral block. This is when we were playing Corlash Teachings. It was a fairly slow deck, and Paul picked up 3 unintentional draws.
Are they all on day 1? Did he do the 6-0-3 advance?
No. He was able to pick up, I think, 2 on day 1, 1 on day 2.
Okay.
And then he was able to intentionally draw into the top 8. And actually, I think Paulo Vitor did the same thing with the same deck at a different tournament at Grand Prix San Francisco, where he actually did, I think, intentionally draw into day 2 at 6-0-3. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but I know there was a lot of draws in that format.
Sure.
Looks like Tamada is going to 6 here. Intentionally drawing 6 is worse than intentionally drawing. But
I'm
sometimes
not sure intentional is the right word.
Yeah, sometimes you don't have the option.
That is 6. Gonna keep those.
And even though this matchup is slow, I mean, we saw game 1 go to turn 20 or something along those lines, I do think that the players are playing at a pretty reasonable pace. So And they
Yeah.
both have an incentive to finish this game, have it come to its natural conclusion.
Right.
So Shadi chooses to play the Tri-Land instead of a Temple, a Scry Temple, which is a pretty reasonable play, especially since right now he has, he's got a good curve and doesn't need, he wouldn't mind a land, but you don't want to scry a land at the top and then draw 2 more lands. I think waiting 2 turns, getting that information from your 2 draw steps, and then playing the Temple actually makes a little more sense.
I agree.
If he didn't have a Caryatid in hand, I would definitely play the Temple turn 1, though, because you really want to play that on turn 2. And that might actually be the card that Tamada takes here. He could try to strand Shadi without, playing that Elspeth anytime soon.
Takes the Caryatid. So now Shadi can Hero's Downfall, but can't really advance his board state in the first couple of turns. So Temple on turn 2.
And he drew a 7-ball with a Doom Blast sitting in his hand.
It's a good card in the matchup, but it'll take a while to set it up.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate it doesn't kill Fleecebane Lion or Rakshasa Death Dealer, but it is pretty good when both players have a bunch of cards in play. Tamada opting not to play a 3rd land, unfortunately.
Fleecebane runs into Hero's Downfall.
Yeah.
More 2 drops from Tamada. This time it's Heir of the Wild.
Well, both players are actually missing land drops now. Shadi can Hero's Downfall, but he can't cast, Siege Rhino, he can't cast Utter End, so...
Shadi is going to Hero's Downfall. Here's another 2 drop, the Death Dealer.
Yeah, for not drawing a land, Sylvan Caryatid's a pretty good draw.
What's the play for Tamada? You clearly attack before tapping your mana.
Yeah, he did,
right?
And he did draw a land, which is good for him.
I don't know if there's any reason to reveal that before the attack, but...
Well, I don't think Shadi's blocking
still
no
not
matter
blocking,
what.
yeah,
So.
exactly.
And it looks like an Anafenza's coming out here. Shadi had to use a Hero's Downfall on a Heir of the Wild, so that's good value for Tamada, I think. I think you'd rather make that trade than have Hero's Downfall hit something else.
All right, here comes Anafenza.
And hostilities, Sylvan Caryatid plan.
Yeah, you do what you got to do.
Yeah. And here the decision is between playing Siege Rhino and casting Utter End. The problem is if you Utter End Anafenza, eventually that Rakshasa could become an issue, especially since it gets around your Wraths. I could see just playing Siege Rhino and, if Tamada has removal for it, you do take 7, so that's not optimal either. It's funny how innocuous the Rakshasa can be in the first couple turns. It's just been hitting for 2 a turn right now, but it turns into a huge threat later.
All right, Shadi does elect for Siege Rhino.
And Tamada has Abzan Charm, so he could just go for the throat and just Abzan Charm Siege Rhino. He could also go for less damage, but a more long-term advantage. Attack with both, put a counter on Rakshasa, and then whichever one gets blocked, put 2+1 counters on it. Or in the case of Anafenza, put 1 counter on that and 1 counter on the Rakshasa if that's the one that gets blocked. But I don't mind just dealing the damage here. I think if you're gonna use the charm, you'd rather just get the damage in.
Tamada comes to the same conclusion, clears Rhino out of the way, and comes crunching over for 7. Now, he's probably going to get swept by end hostilities if Shadi can ever come up with a 5th land.
And given that he can't, I like just casting Utter End here, and I actually might Utter End just the Rakshasa, though...
Oh, since it can regenerate through an end hostilities if there's mana
untapped?
Yeah,
I don't like the picking up the graveyard, though. I think he drew Murderous Cut, which is why he picked up his graveyard, but I think that sort of thing is a tell. Why is my opponent picking up his graveyard? Why does he care about that? Well, there's not very many cards. What could they be? Well, I guess it's a Murderous Cut. I don't know if Tamada got there, because I'm not saying that it's like super obvious, but it's just free information for him, and you could just think about the game and not realize how many cards are in your graveyard, or just kind of glance over.
Shadi agrees with you, by the way. He does use Utter End on the Death Dealer rather than the slightly larger Anafenza.
Yeah, I like doing that.
Tamada follows up with a Sorin and makes a Vampire token. 5th land finally came off the top of Shadi's deck.
Though End Hostility is a lot less appealing now there's a Sorin in play.
True.
So Shadi really wants a way to battle that Sorin. And he's got a bunch of removal spells, and that's where Planeswalkers are good. They fight removal spells very effectively. He's just passing with Murder's Cut up now, which is, sadly inefficient use of the card. It's a 1-mana removal spell, and he's basically spending 5 mana on it because he doesn't really have any other plays.
Here's Despise. 1 mana. Look at your hand, which is a lot of valuable information given what we know is in Shoddy's hand. You get to take a creature or a planeswalker. Shoddy's going to respond with Murderous Cut?
Yeah, I don't like responding there just because you don't really get any value out of responding.
Yeah.
Because he can't, if it was a Thoughtseize, that would be different,
right, but yeah, that was a Despise, not a Thoughtseize. So there's an Elspeth and a Johnny. Plus now Tamada knows about the end hostilities and the Dune Blast.
And this is going to make the game a lot easier for Tamada to play. The knowledge of the Wraths drastically changes their value.
Yep.
Elspeth is generally the more dangerous card. Ajani is the more castable one, but Elspeth's the one you actually lose to. Ajani is good if you already have a board. It's less good as your, the first play onto an empty board.
And Shoddy's 1 mana away from being able to cast Elspeth. So you take Elspeth here?
My inclination would be to take Elspeth. It is harder to cast, but I think it is a little bit more dangerous. I think Tamada's going through his calculations like, how likely am I to finish this game before Shoddy hits 6? What happens if he does? Still, Elspeth is by far the riskier card to let live.
Plus is the Sorin, not interested in cashing it in for a vampire. So...
And especially given that you expect a Wrath to come at some point.
Yeah.
Even though he's deploying more cards to the board, I like doing this. And Hostilities is still a 2-for-1 in the wrong direction.
Right.
And if Shoddy plays an Ajani, it just gets eaten by the Courser plus the Bat at this point.
Shoddy's also down to 7.
Yeah, he's got to worry about his life total too.
Shoddy did draw his 6th land. It's a temple.
And I think if you're going to cast a 5-drop this turn, you want to sack the Windswept Heath before playing the temple, just because now you kind of undid your scrying.
Yeah.
If you put a card to the bottom, now you're shuffling a card back that you don't want.
Yeah.
And if you put a card on top, you're obviously shuffling a card you do want. So that's it's not a huge, impact one way or the other, but it's the sort of thing where it's just sequencing. You just have to think about what you can do the whole turn before making any actions. I think Shoddy might be priced into casting End Hostilities as unfortunate as that is. If he just taps out to cast a Johnny, I guess a Johnny gains him some life. He could play a Johnny plus it. No, but then he just gets hit for 6. So yeah, he just has to cast End Hostilities or pass and chump with Caryatid, though that seems generally worse than casting End Hostilities. But then a Rakshasa comes off the top. Shoddy needs a good sequence of draws to get out of this.
Yeah.
Situations like this are part of why we moved away from sideboarding and hostilities against Abzan out of our Jeskai decks. We just felt that so often it would kill some of their cards but not all of them, and it meant that you had to kill your own cards, and when both decks are playing to the board, especially with Planeswalkers, it's not as effective. It's much more effective when you've got a situation of a deck that has no creatures in it. It's obviously you really want Wraths, or against a deck that has only creatures in it, no Planeswalkers. But when both decks have creatures and their deck has Planeswalkers, look, a Wrath just happened, and Tamada has 2 creatures on the board and still the Planeswalker.
We saw Shoddy win his last round with essentially an End Hostilities. Swept the board, was able to just follow up with more gas. But it does not going to work this time. I'm with you.
Well, it's certainly a powerful card. I'm not saying it has no value. I'm saying that it is the sort of card that I think that you can do slightly better than in this particular matchup.
Shoddy played a blocker. Tamada Heroes downfalls it and pluses his Sorin. That is 6 power, and Shoddy's at 6, right? Tamada believes he's just won the game. Shoddy is... Did he have his life total off? Did he not count the fetch land? Can we tell what they're talking about?
We saw a handshake, so it looks like it got cleared up.
It got cleared up, and Tamada Ryochi is now, holds on to King of the Hill, moves all the way up to 12-0, fully 3 points clear of the field.
Yeah, he's in a really good spot. Nobody can draw with him, so
Correct.
He has to play his next round.
Right.
But he's in a spot where if he picks up 1 unintentional in the next 3 rounds, presumably he's in. And even if he doesn't, he still has a shot to just win one of his next 3 rounds. He just has to win one of his next 3 rounds.
No, he's playing a win in next round.
Yeah.